$500 per XRP? Let me show you some numbers. The IMF just said global debt is now 235% of world GDP. A massive liquidity crisis is on the rise, confirming a $27 trillion liquidity gap. If XRP becomes the bridge asset, global banks would need up to 62 billion XRP for liquidity. But here's the problem. There are only about 60 billion XRP in circulation. XRP is a deflationary asset and no more XRP can ever be created. You see the issue now? I'm about to unveil why the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements are preparing for a massive liquidity crisis and why XRP might completely disappear from exchanges before 2030. But before we get into CBDCs, the IMF playbook, the Bank of International Settlements architecture, I need to ask you one serious question that no crypto holder ever thinks about. What happens to XRP when major financial institutions are obligated to hold XRP on their balance sheets? I'm about to show you why the global system simply can't function without XRP. And most retail investors believe a supply shock happens when price rises quickly. A real supply shock happens when XRP is being used for multiple transactions at a time, meaning XRP leaves circulation before it comes back. And in this video, I'm about to show you a mathematical model. And yes, we see early signs of a supply shock that's building under the surface. Just a few weeks ago, we have seen that ETFs need on-chain XRP and the demand is skyrocketing. On-demand liquidity keeps rising and the XRP used for settlements doesn't even come back on time. Right now, it's only a few institutions. Imagine when 10 to 12 ETFs, banks, and custodians all accumulate XRP at the same time. Yet most people in the crypto space believe once XRP hits 5, 10, or 20 bucks, they're gonna be on time to buy the dip. And that's a shame, because once a rocket finally takes off, it doesn't come back to take other passengers. In other words, you need to be on board before the launching. When the current financial system collapses, triggering a massive liquidity crisis, XRP won't be optional. Ripple told us the entire blueprint back in 2018. They literally said the problem with global payments is $5 trillion sitting frozen in Nostro Vostro accounts. Now think about this. In 2018, that number used to be $5 trillion. Today, the estimate is closer to $27 trillion tied up to the entire banking system. The moment banks stop leaving trillions of dollars in dormant accounts and start to adopt XRP as a neutral bridge currency, that capital doesn't move back to exchanges. It becomes permanently absorbed, locked by institutional demand. And Ripple made this point very clear almost a decade ago. XRP becomes the oil of the global payments engine. And once XRP becomes the liquidity layer, the amount absorbed by institutions will make retail holdings to look microscopic. Banks today have $27 trillion locked in Nostro Vostro accounts. Money that does absolutely nothing except to sit idle as a collateral for settlement. And yes, Ripple even wrote in their white papers that XRP was meant to replace Nostro Vostro accounts. This is not my speculation, this is factual information provided by Ripple over a decade ago. And here is what happens if only 5% of the Nostro Vostro accounts market migrates towards XRP. 5% of $27 trillion, that's about $1.35 trillion. And if you divide $1.35 trillion for 54.4 billion XRP, with this mathematical model, XRP would be at $25. And that's without speculation. We're talking about a real-world use case. We're talking about a mathematical model. 10% would mean $49 per XRP. If full replacement happens, we are talking about XRP above $500 only from replacing Nostro Vostro accounts. And again, this is not a price prediction, it's not a financial advice, it's just a mathematical model. And most people in the crypto space, especially BTC maxis, they believe only a few banks are going to utilize XRP. However, here is the global landscape. We are talking about 10,000 plus commercial banks, over 1,000 central banks and monetary authorities, 500 major payment giants, fintechs, and money transmitters. When Ripple says global settlements, they are talking about everyone. Literally everyone. Now watch the numbers. Here is where people will melt their faces. Brad Garlinghouse has literally told us XRP was designed to be a world reserve currency.
Do you think that the existing issued 100 billion XRPs will be enough to cover once the X-Rapid service scales to a global full scale, or would there be a shortage?
Well, so when XRP was created, this actually was created before Ripple existed. The creators of XRP decided there'd be 100 billion units because they saw it as rather than having a smaller number with a very high price, they saw it as something they wanted to be effectively a global reserve currency.
And no, this video is not made by artificial intelligence. And here is what they have been hiding from retail investors. Well, first let's look at the definition of a reserve currency. A reserve currency is held by governments, central banks, and monetary authorities as part of their international exchange reserves. It's used for international transactions, investments, and all aspects of the global economy. As of today in 2025, the main reserve currency still remains the US dollar. A reserve currency must be neutral, fast, scalable, and usable by every country without political friction. And if nations are utilizing gold as a settlement mechanism to bypass US sanctions, it means something has gone completely wrong with the US dollars. And that's why the IMF created the special drawing rights. They are a synthetic liquidity basket used only by central banks for global settlements. But the special drawing rights is indeed very slow. It still relies on old FX rails and nostro-vostro accounts. It cannot support real-time global settlements. XRP fixes exactly what STRs can't fix. Instant settlements are neutral bridge assets not tied to any country's debts that competes with Visa level in terms of scalability and can replace nostro-vostro accounts entirely. So when Brad says XRP was designed to be a global reserve currency, he literally means XRP fits the technical definition of a neutral reserve asset, but faster and 100 times more efficient. And that's why the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, financial institutions, global leaders just like Christine Lagarde, they all praise XRP's capabilities.
And those who survive, but it will be between those who are cannibalized because they are not seeing it coming and they're not embracing it, and those who self-induce that cannibalization, and I'm using cannibalization on purpose because it's a bit of a striking, horrible word, but it's really what it means. It's you're going to disrupt your business model, you're going to change it, you're going to reduce your cost, you're going to expedite your transactions, and you're going to continue to inspire confidence because you will build that on the basis of an existing backbone, which is your bank and the confidence relationship that you've established with your customers. So that's where I see changes happening now. If you think of Circle and Ripples and all those, that's where they are active and helpful.
And the numbers I'm about to unveil, you might lose your sleep tonight. 48 billion XRP can be locked just to operate global liquidity. Retail will never see that supply again. Tier 1 banks, that's about 200 of them, will need at least 100 million XRP to operate without friction. That means 20 billion XRP would simply vanish. Why I say the 100 million XRP? No, this number doesn't come out of thin air, so I want to make this very clear. Tier 1 banks move between $5 and $50 billion per day in cross-border payments, up to $300 billion per day in total flows. They operate across 30 to 120 currency corridors. And when XRP eventually becomes the settlement asset, that means they need to hold enough XRP to settle global transactions, live corridors, and most importantly, remain compliant with Basel III regulations. And I have to quote David Schwartz, a higher priced XRP is a better vehicle for payments. If XRP hits $10, 100 million XRP is $1 billion in liquidity. If XRP hits $5, 100 million XRP is $500 million in liquidity. If XRP hits $10, 100 million XRP is worth $1 billion in liquidity. And banks need billions in same-day liquidity. Mid-tier banks, that's about 2,000 of them holding 10 million XRP. That's another 20 billion XRP that's gone forever. And being conservative with small banks, that's about 8,000 of them. Adding up those numbers, we are talking about 48 billion XRP that's set to be held by financial institutions. central banks, and monetary authorities. XRP fits perfectly at the definition of a global reserve asset. Retail gets priced out when XRP vanishes from the exchanges. A neutral bridge asset that can't be frozen, confiscated, or instrumentalized by foreign nations. And that's exactly what XRP was designed for. When the system flips and banks are forced to hold XRP as part of global liquidity infrastructure, supply will disappear forever. And if XRP enters an SDR basket, banks won't have a choice but to hold XRP on their balance sheets. At this point, holding XRP won't be optional. Now let me know your thoughts on the comments. Do you think XRP can become a global reserve currency? And if you want to trade crypto without KYC and access derivatives market, I'm gonna drop a link in the description of this video. That's BTCC, the exchange partner of this channel. You're gonna find the link below. Thank you everyone. I'm gonna see you in the next video.